On the 7th of October 2023, a young man trapped in a dangerous area surrounded by terrorists phones his parents who live in the center of Israel, asking them to come down urgently and rescue him from the Nova party near the border of Gaza. Without hesitation, his parents immediately got into their car and headed southward. While the young man's mother drove, her husband kept his eyes on the road and on Waze to make sure they get to the right destination. On their way south, they suddenly saw a suspicious van driving in the opposite direction, to the north. Its looks and the sounds emerging from it spelled danger, yet despite the fear that paralyzed them for a moment, they continued traveling southwards. Luckily, they managed to get to their son, and without thinking much, they loaded their car with 13 other friends and partygoers, 3 of whom they placed in the trunk, and the rest sat crowded like sardines inside the car. On the way back northwards, they saw an IDF soldier on the roadside, signaling to them that he wanted a ride. The amazing couple stopped and picked up the soldier, adding yet another passenger to their already crowded car. As the rescuing father told him, "You are also my son." When they arrived at the intersection with a sign reading Gaza pointing to one direction alongside another sign of Tel Aviv pointing to a different direction, the soldier told them, "Let me off here, I need to go to Gaza." "What?" they asked. "Are you crazy under such dangerous conditions?" "Yes," he replied. "My unit is there and I need to get there as soon as possible." "Okay," said the driver, "we'll get you there," even though everyone in the car sensed that they were heading for trouble. When the soldier was dropped off at his campsite, his commander turned to the people in the car and asked them where they were heading to. "To Tel Aviv," they answered. "Don't dare drive on the main road. It's full of terrorists," he warned them, and then suggested an alternative, safer route they could take. Thank Hashem, they followed his directions and got home safely. How is a story, which is true by the way, though I didn't mention names, connected to this week's portion, Lech Lecha? In contrast to Noach, whom the Torah praises as a righteous man, we hardly know anything about Avraham from the previous Parsha, except that he lived with his father in Haran. All the midrashim and commentaries elaborate on the fact that Avraham came to realize that there was a single divine being at a very young age, a belief that he made a point to spread out to everyone in his surroundings. He also made it a point to convince people about the falsehood of idolatry that was prevalent at that time. By maintaining these beliefs and spreading them out to others, he almost paid with his life when he was thrown into the furnace of Kasdim. Yet, despite all of this, the Torah saw fit to introduce us to Avraham, particularly with the first directive he received from Hashem in this Parsha, Lech Lecha, go out of your land. So we ask, why when dealing with Avraham, who made it his mission in life to spread out the belief in one Creator, Avraham, known as a man of kindness and amazing hospitality, qualities that he apparently grew up with, why does the Torah make no mention of these before this Parsha? We would have expected the Torah to tell us how special Avraham, our forefather, was at a much younger age than 75, when only then Hashem told him to go out of his land. But this comes to teach us that Avraham was chosen for a reason that has nothing to do with his personality. There was no apparent reason for this according to some sources. Hashem had established a fact. The fact is that people of Israel are the most special of the nations, a nation that is given 613 commandments, which, by the way, the patriarchs also fulfilled out of their own initiative. Why? Because these people are intrinsically capable of more. Because they are the kind of people who tell a soldier on the road in times of danger that there's room also for him in a car packed with people. Because you are also my son. We have it in our blood, in our DNA, regardless of being praised for our acts or not. And as having the merit to be the offspring of such remarkable ancestors, you are also capable of fulfilling far-reached commands like Lech Lecha, go for yourself or go to yourself. Unlike any other travelers who know or are told where to go, in the case of Avraham, he is told from where to go, with no definite destination revealed to him, other than to the land I will show you. He is instructed, get out of yourself, from where? From your country, meaning your land, your desires, from your homeland, from your habits and virtues, and from your father's home, since fathers give instructions. Figuratively, a father indicates wisdom. So Avraham is told, put all these inner qualities, including your wisdom, aside, and go further, actually meaning step higher spiritually. And our brothers and sisters who survived recent atrocities prove with their statements of faith that they realized that the source of the attack was not Hamas, and that it came from above. Aside of former captives that admitted that they spoke to Hashem in the tunnels, and there are amazing stories about, for example, offering the terrorists to serve them on condition that they, the terrorists, who were actually cruel and starved them, leave 2 holy books in the possession of the captives. I have heard unfathomable descriptions projecting inner faith and see in my mind's eye a huge shelter in the basement of a shopping mall full of Jews who are far from observing the mitzvot, all of them singing Shir HaMalos, the Song of Ascents. I lift up my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? It is this same spark of faith in the tunnels and in the shelters that many non-observers had committed to attend to synagogues on Shabbat, light Shabbat candles, and to engage in volunteer work, and so on. In any case, the Torah comes to teach us and inform us of a message from Hashem indicating, I have chosen you, and regardless of your degree of observance, before you did anything that is written in the Torah, I'll tell you what to do, as I have told your forefather Avraham. And what did he tell Avraham? Go away from your country, your homeland, and from your father's house. You are more capable than other people, so you believe that I will lead you where you need to go. What is important for you to know is to get out and rise from your previous spiritual level. I heard from a former beauty queen who became rich from sales, who claimed that despite the rocketing success of her business, she still remains with an inner emptiness. But again, on the one hand, you are part of a special nation and must therefore rise. On the other hand, it is known that a camel is not loaded more than it can carry. Therefore, your missions are feasible. In fact, each and every one of us can target a single act, deed, or commandment in which we choose to progress a little, not a lot. If you commit yourself to lots of improvements at once, you are apt to fail. These undertakings can be expressed in the positive or negative sense. For example, I say to myself, I will try to avoid wasting my precious time and soul on petty matters. And this attitude is very appropriate, especially in these days, after the high holidays when we loaded ourselves with inspirations, that we do not leave this elevated state behind us, but rather carry the joy and the inspiration with us and manifest them throughout the year and in places where we will be. And here's how some commentaries explain what Avraham was told. Go away from your land. Avraham is likened to a precious perfume box that was placed in a hidden corner, and only few were able to enjoy it in his home in Haran. And just as the perfume could benefit more people the more it is outspread, so Avraham had to leave his town and spread his teachings in other places in order to inspire as many people as possible and to purify the world. As mentioned, the commentators reveal to us that Avraham Avinu, Avraham our father, spread his belief in one Creator long before he reached the age of 75. Did Hashem tell him to stop spreading his belief in the Parsha of Lech Lecha? The answer is no. Rather, the activity takes on a different dimension. If formerly Avraham's activities in his pursuit were derived from his own initiative, in other words, that of a human initiative, that is inevitably bound by human limitations, at this point in Lech Lecha, Hashem says to Avraham, listen, continue to do what you are doing, but from now on I officially accompany you. And I also promise you that I will glorify your name and that you will be a blessing, etc. When Avraham becomes the official emissary of Hashem, he is not only assisted in his missions, but he is supported by the supernatural miracles even more than in the past. And therefore, among other things, he is also able to intervene on behalf of his nephew Lot in the First World War in history and to defeat 4 mighty kings by means of simple sand that turns into powerful arrows miraculously. Likewise, although we are ultimately given a load of commandments to keep us on track, we are capable of fulfilling them, being created and refined with exceptional spiritual capacities, while also realizing that when we trod in the proper direction, each and every one of us has Hashem by his and her side, constantly assisting us in every step. and if we open our eyes, we can appreciate and thank Him for the daily miracles that we experience in our lives. Maybe, if you are like me, you like to be in one place, a familiar and comfortable place, and you may be trying to convince yourself that everything can be done from home. Because if it's possible to work from home nowadays, with all the technology at our fingertips, it's also possible to spread Yiddishkeit, Judaism, from home. True to Avraham's revelation that Hashem is everywhere, His presence is sometimes easier and sometimes harder to realize, depending on who you are. A God-fearing Jew in the town of Mezrich once noticed that many people were coming in town to spend time and to seek guidance from the saintly Maggid of Mezrich. So he told himself once, being that I live here, I ought to go and see what's so special about these Hasidim. So after attending the services and the studies in their gathering place for a while, he eventually became a Hasid himself. But as this was transpiring, he noticed that his earnings were becoming less and less, and his local business was going downhill. So he went over to the Maggid and complained, "Why did my financial situation worsen, particularly after I became a Hasid?" So the Maggid answered him, "Our sages say, if a person wishes to become wise, he should go southward, and if he wishes to become rich, he should go northward. You want both things. You want to be both wise and to advance spiritually and to be rich. I have advice for you. If you belittle yourself, meaning the material aspect of your life, you will take no place, and if you take no place, you can be in the north and in the south simultaneously." The Maggid had also blessed him, and eventually he regained his wealth. This incident illustrates yet another aspect of Lech Lecha, going to yourself. If you dig into your true inner self, your physical location takes on lesser priority unless you're at a place where you're expected to spread Yiddishkeit. Let us return to Avraham Avinu and ask, the Parsha comes to teach us to be in constant motion of elevation. What about the incidents that implied that he had apparently descended from a spiritual level? This is reflected in his descent to Egypt at the time of the famine, and in his willingness to seemingly forfeit Sarah's fate by telling her to insist that she is his sister, which may portray a type of degradation. How can we fathom this harsh statement he told her? "Tell them that you are my sister so they can give me gifts in your merit." If any husband nowadays would approach his wife in this way, he would surely be reprimanded, to say the least. This and her abduction and forced captivity at the palace of Paro does not only work against our belief that righteous people ought to be dealt with kindly and be rewarded, but it also negates the very blessings Hashem gave to Avraham in this Parsha. In regard to this discussion, though, we would like to reconcile this blatant contradiction of these incidents, including the interpretation of the Ramban, who claims that Avraham failed to meet the expectations of him, to believe that Hashem will sustain him regardless of the famine in Israel, where he was expected to remain. Yet most of the commentaries do not consider this a transgression. Nonetheless, the question remains, don't these behavioral pitfalls of Avraham defy the expectations of him and of us to reach higher and higher, as expressed in the instruction of Lech Lecha? Since I already mentioned it, the explanation of Avraham's request of Sarah to claim that she is Avraham's brother actually would benefit her. How? In those days it was customary for brothers to marry off their sisters. Avraham had full faith in Sarah's piety that would prevent Paro from touching her, which had actually occurred that way. His proposal, however, was in her best interest, since if she had admitted that she was Avraham's wife, they would kill him, and she would be taken to the king's harem and rot there. By considering him her brother, they had expected to marry her off to the king, in a way which Avraham receives gifts from the king and becomes wealthy and respected, at a point at where he believed he would have the power to help her in her predicament. And with the help of Hashem, she was presently released and returned to him. The Parsha and commentaries go on to describe how Paro was stricken with an illness that prevented him from nearing Sarah. Upon realizing that he was punished from above, he agreed to return Sarah to Avraham. In addition to logical interpretations of Avraham's moves as related in the Torah, there is a known saying of our sages that everything that occurred with our forefathers are not only lessons to us, but act as preliminary preparations for what will occur in subsequent years. Therefore, the very descent to Egypt was predetermined by Hashem in order to prepare the area for the Jews who would arrive there later on. And just as Avraham left laden with riches and gifts, so were the Jews showered with many gifts and riches as they left Egypt many years later. In the same way, the fact that Sarah maintained her modesty in Paro's house, this was not only a guide for the women of Israel later on to be modest, but Sarah's piety has also given them the power to preserve their purity even while they were in Egypt, that was considered the most unholy land. Likewise, it's mentioned in our sources that thanks to what had occurred to Sarah, Jewish women were also protected from the Egyptians during their years of slavery in Egypt. What does this tell us, and how do the lessons from these alleged shortcomings encourage us in our daily lives? In our lives, sometimes we are forced to descend to unwanted situations. We should understand that these are temporary, predetermined from above, and also part of the plan. We can't kid ourselves to believe that we are always heading in an upward direction. We do inevitably meet pitfalls along the way. So the instruction is not to panic when we fail here and there spiritually. Our evil inclination, who deceives us, uses a devious trick. After it manages to cause us to fail in some matter, it leads us to sadness and despair, and for a good reason. We may say to ourselves, like recently on Yom Kippur, we atoned for our misgivings, and since then we have fallen again and again. Do we have any hope for improving? The answer to our evil inclination is definitely. We shall overcome. Even our forefathers have failed in some way or other, and then have risen over and over again. We ought to be glad, and we can still improve and continue on our life trip with joy, since sadness and despair are apt to lead you downhill, while joy gives you a boost to take action in a positive way. It is told about Hasidim that after davening prayer, they sit and gather and rejoice and drink some liquor and make l'chaim. In different Jewish circles, after davening or prayer, even pious and God-fearing people sit and study Mishnah, which is quite appropriate. What's the difference? Some representatives of the second group once approached Hasidim and argued, "Do you have nothing else to do at this time, just after davening? Is it worth wasting your time on celebrations? Wouldn't you rather learn Torah?" The Hasidim then answered, "And what do you do after davening? You recite Mishnayot. Actually, Mishnayot are recited in honor of a person who had passed away. But we live, drink, rejoice, and encourage one another. This is the proper way to serve Hashem, and to continue to advance spiritually. I'm not determining who's right here. I'll let you, the listeners, decide." Once, two Hasidim went on a long Lech Lecha drive to visit their Rebbe. At a certain station, they missed their next train, and one of them felt completely devastated. "Oh," he told his friend, "by this time we could have been at the Rebbe's." The other fellow lifted his head for a moment from the book he was engrossed in and said, "Come to think of it, why are we going to the Rebbe? To boost our motivation to study Torah with devotion, and I feel that already. I feel that I already have achieved the joy of Torah study even here. No reason to regret the delay, since if the goal has already been achieved on the way, we could make twice the profit." Once a very religious person was forced to do his Lech Lecha from a religious area and moved to a city where Torah mitzvahs were far from being observed. Upon departure from his former home, realizing his plight, his rabbi approached him and told him, "If you constantly have in mind that you are walking around with a menorah in order to illuminate your surroundings, you really have nothing to fear." In another case, a woman who had a respectable job in a big city was fired from her job and as a result moved to a smaller town. In this town, she joined a group of volunteers who prepared Shabbos meals for needy families. When a friend from her former residence asked her how she was adjusting to her new situation, she said, "I profit a lot more here than I did at work. At work, my efforts were realized and I got paid for them. But here, I have a lot more. I have acquired the joy of giving." So whether Lech Lecha and spiritual growth is realized by giving to others or by maintaining a consciousness of ongoing ascent step by step while disregarding occasional falls, we are blessed with the privilege of being the descendants of the saintly Avraham and Sarah, and may we have the merit to meet with them in person with the coming of Mashiach speedily in our times.